Have you ever stood in line at a gas station or a corner shop, staring at that colorful display of lottery tickets, and thought, what if today's my day? You feel your heart race, your palms sweat, and for a split second you imagine your life changing overnight. New home, freedom from debt, traveling the world. It feels real, doesn't it? But here's the question. Have you ever bought that ticket and walked away disappointed? Course you have. We all have. See, the world teaches us that luck is random, that life is a gamble, that success comes only to a chosen few. But Florence Scovel Shinn, a woman of unshakable faith and wisdom, taught something radically different. She believed that life is not a game of chance. It's a game of spiritual law. And before you take that ticket, before you invest your hope in a slip of paper, she said you must align your spirit with truth. 3 words. That's all it takes. Pauses. Leans forward, voice soft. Are you ready for them? Here they are. God is supply. Say them with me. God is supply. These are not just words. They are a declaration, a key that unlocks abundance. When you say them, you remind yourself that your good does not come from luck, chance, or numbers on a screen. Comes from a source that never runs dry. Think about it. The universe you live in is overflowing with wealth. Oceans hold more water than we can drink. Fields grow more food than we can eat. Stars fill the sky beyond what we can count. If God can supply galaxies, don't you think He can supply your rent, your business, your dreams? But here's the problem. Most people approach money with fear. They clutch their wallets. They whisper, I hope I have enough. Fear is a closed fist. Faith is an open hand. And Florence knew this truth. You attract what you believe. If you say, I'm broke, I'm unlucky, nothing works out for me, your words build walls around your blessings. But if you stand in that same shop, holding that same ticket and declare, God is supply, something shifts. You open a door. You align your spirit. And you invite miracles. Let me share a story. A woman once told Florence that she'd never won anything in her life. She said, I'm just unlucky. Florence told her, speak differently. See yourself differently. Say, God is supply and every need is met. That woman changed her words. She started expecting good. And though she didn't become a millionaire overnight, doors opened. She received gifts. Opportunities appeared. Debt disappeared. She stepped into abundance because she stopped relying on luck and started relying on God's law. Now let me ask you, when was the last time you truly believed you were supported by something greater than yourself? When was the last time you stopped worrying and started trusting? History is filled with men and women who trusted divine supply. Think of George Mahler, who cared for thousands of orphans with no money, yet never asked a soul for help. He prayed and provisions arrived daily. Was that luck? Or was it faith in a God who supplies? You see, the lottery is just a symbol. That ticket isn't your source. God is your source. When you walk in faith, abundance doesn't come only in numbers. It comes in ideas, connections, health, and peace. And that's far richer than a jackpot. So the next time you stand at that counter or face any decision about money, pause. Put your hand on your heart. And whisper those 3 words. God is supply. Because when you live by faith, you'll never have to beg. You'll never have to chase. You'll never have to fear. Instead, you'll rise every morning knowing you are backed by heaven's wealth. And that's worth more than any winning ticket. Thank you. Key takeaways. Faith, not luck, determines your abundance. The phrase God is supply aligns you with divine provision and removes fear. Words create your reality. Speak abundance, not lack. Wealth is not only money but health, opportunities, and peace. Trusting God opens unexpected doors and solutions. The lottery ticket is just a symbol. Your true source is unlimited and divine. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a young man named Daniel, sitting alone at his kitchen table late at night. The only light in the room is the dim glow of a single bulb, flickering slightly as if even it is uncertain it can keep shining. Bills are stacked high in front of him, envelopes unopened because he already knows what they say. Overdue. Past due. Final notice. His rent is late. His car payment is hanging by a thread, and his fridge holds nothing but a carton of eggs and half a jar of peanut butter. He has $12 left in his bank account. And tomorrow he's supposed to buy groceries for his kids. In moments like these, when fear curls tightly around your chest, faith can feel like a luxury, something for other people, not for you. Daniel thinks about buying a lottery ticket. After all, what's $2 when he has nothing to lose? He imagines himself standing at that gas station counter, choosing one brightly colored slip of paper that promises hope. Just one ticket. Just one shot. But deep down, he doesn't really believe he'll win. He's never been lucky. No one in his family has. That's how many of us live, believing that abundance is tied to random luck, that wealth and opportunity are blessings for the chosen few, the lucky ones, while the rest of us scrape by. We live life as if it's a cosmic dice roll. But Florence Scovel Shinn, a woman whose writings continue to change lives a century later, stood on a very different truth. She said, "Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. Faith is not hope. Hope waits. Faith acts. Faith doesn't look at bank accounts. It looks at God's supply." She taught that every good thing in your life is not determined by luck, but by alignment with spiritual law. Think about that for a moment. If you believe you're unlucky, that belief colors every decision you make. You walk through life expecting struggle. Your energy, your words, even your posture tell the world, "I'm bracing for disappointment." But what if that belief isn't true? What if luck is just a story we've been told, a crutch we lean on when we don't understand the power of faith? Imagine Daniel again, but this time he pauses. Instead of reaching for a ticket with trembling hands, he closes his eyes and whispers, "God is supply." He breathes deeply, lets those words settle in his heart, and for the first time in days, his shoulders relax. He doesn't see an immediate pile of cash on the table, but something shifts inside him. That shift is the first miracle. Because abundance doesn't start with what's in your pocket. It starts with what's in your mind. Florence often said, "The invisible forces are ever working for man who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it." She believed your words and beliefs draw circumstances to you like a magnet. Have you ever met someone who always seems to stumble into blessings? A friend who gets unexpected opportunities, promotions, or help at the exact right time. You might think they're lucky, but often they're people who walk through life expecting good. They've trained themselves to see possibilities where others see dead ends. Faith, in that sense, is the most powerful currency you can carry. And unlike money, it cannot run out. Let's look at history. George Muller, the man who cared for thousands of orphans in the 1800s, never asked anyone for financial support. He simply prayed. Time after time, when food supplies were empty and children were waiting for breakfast, a knock would come at the door. A baker with extra bread. A milkman whose cart broke down outside the orphanage. Coincidences, some might say. But Muller would tell you it was faith. He once said, "Faith does not operate in the realm of the possible. Faith begins where man's power ends." Think about that. Faith begins where your own strength stops. Daniel, sitting at that table, thinks his hope is in the ticket, in beating impossible odds. But if he understood faith the way Florence taught it, he'd know the ticket is just a piece of paper. His real hope is in a God who knows his needs before he even speaks them. Faith doesn't deny reality. It redefines it. It doesn't ignore bills or empty bank accounts, but it refuses to let them dictate the future. Faith says, "Yes, this is what I see, but I know something greater is at work." We live in a culture obsessed with luck. Advertisements promise, "This is your chance." Social media shows us people winning big, turning ordinary days into jackpot moments. But faith is not about a single big win. It's about a steady stream of provision, often showing up in ways that surprise you. It's the unexpected call from a friend offering you work. It's the promotion you didn't think you'd get. It's the peace that settles in your heart when you can't see a way forward. Faith is not flashy, but it is sure. Florence's wisdom reminds us that what we call luck is often just the fruit of spiritual alignment. Let's go back to Daniel one more time. A week later, he hasn't won the lottery because he never bought the ticket. But something remarkable has happened. He got a call from a company he applied to months ago, offering him a job. His neighbor, without knowing his situation, dropped by with groceries, saying she had extra from a delivery. At church on Sunday, someone slipped him an envelope with enough cash to cover his rent. Daniel sits at the same table, but now there's hope. He whispers again, "God is supply," and realizes those words aren't magic. They're truth. And truth always produces fruit. Faith is a decision, not a feeling. Most of us wait for feelings before we act, but feelings follow faith, not the other way around. Florence compared words to seeds. You plant them, water them, and trust them to grow, even when you don't see anything at first. Saying God is supply doesn't mean a check will fall from the sky tomorrow, but it sets spiritual law in motion. You begin to see opportunities. You meet the right people. Ideas come that never crossed your mind before. Your spirit becomes expectant, and expectation is the soil where miracles grow. Consider how many times in your life something unexpected showed up just when you needed it most. Maybe it was a job that came through at the 11th hour. Maybe it was a stranger's kindness that kept you going. Those moments are not accidents. They are evidence of a supply chain far greater than Wall Street or a lottery jackpot. They are whispers of a God who provides. Faith is choosing to believe that whisper, even when fear is loud. Daniel's story isn't unique. There are countless Daniels, people who live day to day, waiting for luck to rescue them. But Florence Shinn's message is timeless because it flips that narrative. You don't need to wait for luck. You need to declare truth. You need to see yourself as a child of divine supply, not a victim of circumstance. And once you do, the world around you shifts in ways you can't explain but can never deny. Faith isn't about escaping life's challenges. It's about walking through them with an anchor in your soul. It's waking up and saying, "I'm not alone. I'm not forgotten. My supply is guaranteed because it doesn't come from man. It comes from God." And when you live from that place, fear loses its grip, scarcity loses its hold, and you start to see blessings everywhere you look. Close your eyes and imagine this. You're standing in a busy store, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the faint smell of coffee and gasoline in the air. In front of you is that familiar display of brightly colored lottery tickets, each one screaming at you with bold fonts and promises of a life you've only dreamed of. You take a deep breath, reach into your pocket, and your fingers wrap around a crumpled bill. Your mind is racing. What if this is the one? What if today's the day everything changes? And in that very moment, before you even pick up the ticket, before you let hope or fear dictate your next move, there's a pause, a stillness, a whisper inside that says, "God is supply." 3 simple words, yet they carry the weight of heaven itself. Those words are more powerful than any jackpot number, because they declare a truth that money cannot buy. Your source is not man, it's not a system, and it's not luck. Your supply flows from a well that never runs dry. Florence Scovel Shinn believed that words are not just sounds. They are spiritual forces. She wrote, "Your word is your wand. What you speak you summon. And when you declare God is supply, you are not begging for provision. You are aligning yourself with it. It's like tuning a radio. The station was always broadcasting, but until you turned the dial, you couldn't hear it. In the same way, divine supply has always been there, but speaking these words turns your heart toward that frequency, making it real and tangible in your life. Picture a woman named Eleanor, living in a small apartment with peeling wallpaper and dreams that feel too big for her reality. She works long hours at a job she doesn't love, just to scrape by. One evening, feeling exhausted and defeated, she comes across Florence's book at a thrift store, its pages worn, its cover faded. She opens it to a line that seems to leap off the page. "God is supply, and every demand is met." Something inside her stirs. That night, for the first time, she speaks the words out loud. Her voice shakes, but she says them anyway. God is supply. She repeats it like a lifeline. Over the next few weeks, she keeps saying it. On her way to work, while folding laundry, even in moments when doubt tries to creep in. She doesn't see lightning bolts or instant wealth, but she notices something changing. A peace settles over her heart, and fear loosens its grip. Soon she's offered a better job. Then a friend gifts her a couch when hers breaks. Money she forgot about arrives unexpectedly from an overpaid bill. Eleanor starts to realize the power of those 3 words. They aren't magic, they're truth. And truth always bears fruit. We often think that provision is about hustling harder, worrying more, or waiting for luck to strike like lightning. But divine supply doesn't operate like that. It's not dependent on what's happening in the stock market, who you know, or even what you have in your wallet. The phrase, God is supply, shifts your focus from a place of fear to a place of faith. It's like stepping out of a storm into a warm, quiet room where everything you need has already been prepared for you. This isn't about denial. It's about declaration. You can be standing in front of a pile of overdue bills and still say, God is supply. You can be down to your last dollar and still know, God is supply. Because when you say it, you're not pretending your problems don't exist. You're declaring that they are not your source. Florence told a story about a man who owed a large sum of money and had no idea how he would pay it. Instead of panicking, he simply affirmed daily, God is supply. God is my immediate supply. He kept speaking those words with faith, not desperation. Within weeks, an unexpected business deal came through, bringing not just enough to cover his debt but more than he needed. This isn't a fairy tale. It's the law of faith at work. When you say, God is supply, you're not hoping for a miracle. You're recognizing that the miracle already exists and you're stepping into it. Think about the way nature operates. The sun rises every day without you asking for it. The air you breathe is abundant and free. A single apple seed contains the potential for an entire orchard. Supply is not scarce. The world around you is a constant reminder of God's generosity. And yet, how often do we live as if everything is running out? As if opportunities are limited, money is hard to come by, and blessings are reserved for someone else. That's why those 3 words are so powerful. They shatter the illusion of scarcity. They anchor you to a truth greater than your circumstances. Imagine a single mother, standing in the grocery store with tears in her eyes because she's doing mental math, trying to decide what to put back on the shelf. In that moment, fear whispers, "You'll never have enough." But she takes a deep breath and says softly, "God is supply." The words don't magically fill her cart, but they shift something inside her. She feels peace. She feels strength. She remembers times when help came from unexpected places. And that week, a neighbor shows up at her door with a bag of groceries, saying they had extras. Was it luck? Or was it divine supply responding to her faith? Saying God is supply is like opening a door you didn't even realize was locked. It's an act of trust that invites provision to flow in ways you could never plan. Sometimes it shows up as money. Other times it's an idea that changes everything, a phone call that opens a door, or the inner peace that keeps you steady when the world feels uncertain. Florence wrote, "There is a supply for every demand. Not some demands. Not just the easy ones. Every demand. That means there is already a solution for every problem you face. And declaring God is supply is how you bring that solution from the unseen into the seen. Consider the difference between fear and faith. Fear looks at an empty bank account and says, "This is all there is." Faith looks at the same bank account and says, "This is temporary. My supply doesn't come from here." Fear clings tightly to what little you have, convinced there won't be more. Faith opens its hands, knowing that giving and receiving are part of the same flow. Saying God is supply doesn't just change your words, it changes your posture. You stop walking through life like a beggar, and you start walking like a child of the King. There's something deeply powerful about speaking truth out loud. Your mind hears it. Your heart begins to believe it. And over time your life aligns with it. The words "God is supply" are not a mantra. They are a declaration of spiritual law. The law of gravity doesn't care whether you believe in it or not. It still works. And the law of divine supply operates the same way. But your words, your faith, and your trust unlock its flow in your life. The next time you're about to make a big decision, whether it's buying a lottery ticket, paying a bill, or stepping into a new opportunity, pause. Place your hand over your heart. And say those 3 words with confidence. God is supply. Feel them settle deep in your spirit. Know that those words connect you to a well that never runs dry, to a source that never says, "Sorry, we're out." In that moment, fear loses its grip. Scarcity loses its power. And faith begins to rise like a sunrise over a dark horizon, filling you with hope, courage, and the quiet confidence that your needs will always, always be met. Picture this. A small town at dawn, streets still empty, mist clinging to the corners of the pavement like a soft gray blanket. A young woman named Maria walks briskly to the local corner shop. Her coat pulled tightly around her, the soles of her worn shoes slapping softly against the pavement. In her hand, she clutches a few crumpled bills, the result of a week spent juggling bills and borrowing from friends just to make ends meet. Today, she has a different mission. She wants a lottery ticket, a fleeting chance at a life that seems just beyond her reach. She hesitates at the counter, her heart pounding, and glances at the rows of colorful tickets, each one promising dreams she can't yet grasp. She wonders, is this luck? Or is it hope? But before she buys, she remembers something she read long ago, something that had lingered in the back of her mind like a gentle whisper. Your words create your reality. Speak only what you wish to see. Maria pauses. She can almost feel the weight of her own words pressing down on her. For years, she has been speaking scarcity into her life without realizing it. "I never have enough," she muttered last week while counting pennies. "I'm just unlucky," she whispered after missing a small opportunity. Those words, repeated day after day, had woven themselves into the fabric of her life, shaping every thought, every decision, every expectation. And now, as she stands in front of the counter, she realizes that if she wants something different, if she wants abundance, if she wants joy, if she wants miracles, she must speak differently. She takes a breath and leans in, almost as if confiding in the cashier, though he is too busy to notice. "God is supply," she whispers, barely audible at first. Then louder. "God is supply." She repeats it 3 times, feeling the words roll over her tongue, letting them sink into her chest like seeds planted deep in fertile soil. She doesn't fully understand it yet, but she feels a shift, subtle and profound. There's a lightness, a sense that she is no longer carrying the weight of the world alone. That small declaration, made with intention, begins to untangle the knots of fear and doubt that have held her captive for so long. Think about the power of words. Florence Scovel Shinn, who devoted her life to understanding the invisible forces that govern our existence, wrote, "Your word is your wand. The words you speak create your destiny." She understood that words are more than sounds. They are commands to the universe. They are magnets that draw experiences, people, and circumstances to us. Fearful words repel blessings, while words of faith attract them. Maria's quiet affirmation is not a mere hope. It is a deliberate act of creation. She is choosing to align herself with the flow of supply rather than resist it with doubt and worry. Maria walks home that morning with a new sense of possibility. She doesn't know exactly what will happen, but she carries a certainty in her heart that she hasn't felt in years. She remembers the story of a man Florence spoke of, a man who owed a considerable debt he had no idea how to repay. Instead of succumbing to panic, he affirmed daily, "God is my supply, and every demand is met." Miraculously, doors opened, unexpected opportunities appeared, and debts were cleared, not because of luck or manipulation, but because he spoke truth and trusted the unseen law of supply. Maria realizes she has taken the first step on a similar path. She has spoken truth, and now she must act with faith, not fear. Days pass, and Maria notices subtle changes. A neighbor, noticing her struggles, offers a bag of fresh vegetables from her garden. A distant relative sends a small check she had forgotten about. At work, a new project comes her way, accompanied by a modest bonus she hadn't anticipated. None of these are grand, life-altering events on their own, but together they form a tapestry of abundance she hadn't imagined. It's as though the universe is responding to her words, her intention, and her willingness to believe that supply is always present. She begins to understand that the lottery ticket was never truly the source of her hope. The real source has always been divine, infinite, and responsive, waiting for her to acknowledge it. Consider for a moment the way nature works. A single seed, planted in the soil, carries within it the blueprint of a vast tree, capable of producing countless fruits over decades. Yet it must be planted, nurtured, and allowed to grow. Words function the same way. God is supply is a seed of faith. Spoken repeatedly, with intention, it takes root in the subconscious mind and begins to influence thought patterns, decisions, and actions. Every thought aligned with that declaration becomes a nourishing drop of water. Every act of trust becomes sunlight, and slowly, invisibly, abundantly, the seed grows into manifestation. Maria is witnessing this process firsthand, and with each passing day, she feels the invisible hands of provision guiding her. We often underestimate the role of belief in shaping outcomes. A young man named Joshua, struggling with chronic unemployment, had become resigned to his circumstances. He repeated the same negative affirmations every day. I can't find a job, I'm unlucky. Nothing ever works out for me. One evening, desperate and exhausted, he came across Florence's writing. He read, "Expect your good and it will be yours. Speak it, believe it, and act as if it is already done." Joshua hesitated, then tried something new. He stood before a mirror and said aloud, "God is supply. All my needs are met." He said it again and again until he could feel it in his bones. Within weeks, a friend referred him to a position perfectly suited to his skills, one that paid better than he had hoped. A small investment he had forgotten about matured into a sum sufficient to cover his bills. Joshua realized he had been living in self-imposed scarcity, and by changing his words and expectations, he had unlocked a flow of provision he never imagined. The principle Maria and Joshua both discovered is universal. Abundance responds to the clarity of your declaration. Fear and doubt close doors, while faith and spoken truth open them. Every time you say, "God is supply," you are consciously shifting your frequency from lack to plenty, from worry to trust, from limitation to possibility. You are declaring alignment with a source that cannot fail. Florence Scovel Shinn often reminded her readers that the invisible world is far more powerful than the visible one, and that our words, attitudes, and expectations act as the channel through which divine supply flows. Back in Maria's small town, the weeks continue, and the manifestations of her spoken faith grow more remarkable. A local organization, hearing of her dedication to community work, offers her a scholarship to attend a course that could advance her career. A friend invites her to collaborate on a small business idea she had abandoned long ago. The bills she once feared will never be paid begin to settle in ways that seem almost effortless. Each blessing, each unexpected provision, reinforces the truth she has been speaking aloud. Words are not idle sounds, they are living forces. The universe responds not to fear, not to panic, not to worry, but to declarations of faith. Maria's story reminds us that we do not need to wait for extraordinary luck to appear, nor should we measure hope by the odds of a lottery ticket. The act of speaking divine truth, of declaring with conviction that our supply is assured, changes the landscape of our lives. It transforms our inner world, and the outer world inevitably follows. Words have a power that is immediate, subtle, and unstoppable. They are the instruments through which we participate in creation itself. As Maria continues to repeat those 3 words, she learns to see her life differently. Doors that once seemed closed now appear open. Problems that once seemed insurmountable now have solutions. Fear no longer drives her actions. Faith does. She understands that provision is not random and it is not scarce. It is everywhere, ready to meet her needs in ways she cannot yet fully see. Every time she whispers, God is supply. She reinforces the invisible law that governs all things, calling the unseen into the seen, drawing miracles into the ordinary flow of life. Imagine a quiet street in the early morning, the sun just beginning to cast golden light over the rooftops, dew sparkling on the grass like tiny diamonds. On this street, a man named Thomas is walking to his car, briefcase in hand, already running late for work. His mind is buzzing with worry, unpaid bills, mounting debts, and a promotion that seems always just out of reach. As he approaches his car, he glances at the mailbox and sees a small envelope, ordinary in appearance, but it makes his heart skip a beat. Inside is a check from an unexpected source, an overpayment from a client he had thought was long gone, a gift that seems almost too good to be true. Thomas stares at it in disbelief, feeling a mix of relief and wonder. How did this happen? Was it luck, coincidence, or perhaps something else entirely? Thomas remembers a lesson he had once read from Florence Scovel Shinn, words that had resonated with him but which he had often forgotten in the hustle of life. There is a supply for every demand, but you must speak and act as though it is already yours. Those words come alive in this moment, not as abstract advice, but as a living truth that has just manifested in his life. It isn't luck that brought him this provision. It is alignment with a law far greater than himself. Let me take you back a few months, to when Thomas was deep in worry. Every day he would look at his bills and shake his head. "I don't know how I'm going to make it," he muttered repeatedly. Fear had become a constant companion, whispering doubts in his ear, making every decision feel heavier than it should. He believed that provision was scarce, that opportunities were few, and that life was a game of chance. But one evening, while walking home from work, he paused to reflect on the words he had read from Florence. "Expect your good and it will be yours. Speak it, believe it, and act as if it is already done." He realized that he had been speaking defeat into his life every day, and that his words were shaping the reality he was living. That night, he sat at his kitchen table, closed his eyes, and made a conscious decision. Instead of whispering fears into the darkness, he would declare truth. He spoke softly at first. "God is supply. Every need I have is met. Opportunities flow to me effortlessly." He repeated it until the words felt like part of his own breath, until they became a steady rhythm in his heart. It felt strange at first, as if he were acting out a script written by someone else, but slowly the tension in his chest began to ease. There was a lightness he hadn't felt in months, a quiet certainty that things were being taken care of in ways he could not yet see. The next morning, Thomas walked into work with a different energy. His posture was more upright. His voice carried a newfound confidence, and his mind was alert to possibilities that previously went unnoticed. That afternoon, a colleague approached him with an unexpected assignment, a project that played directly to his strengths and offered a generous bonus. By the end of the week, small opportunities continued to emerge. Emails from clients who had been delayed, invitations to meetings that had been postponed, even a chance encounter with an old friend who offered guidance and support. Thomas began to see a pattern forming. When he spoke words of faith, aligned with the truth of divine supply, life responded. Think about the power in that for a moment. Too often, we wait for life to hand us blessings as if they are rare prizes, something outside our control. We clutch fear tightly, thinking that our circumstances dictate what is possible. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that this is not the way the world works. She wrote, "The invisible forces are ever working for man who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it." In other words, life is not random. It responds to the direction of our words, thoughts, and beliefs. Every time Thomas declared, "God is supply," he was not passively wishing for help. He was actively inviting unseen forces to operate on his behalf. Consider another example, a woman named Lydia, who had been struggling to start a small business. She had ideas, ambition, and talent, but her bank account was nearly empty, and fear had become a heavy weight on her shoulders. She spent hours worrying about how she would pay rent, buy supplies, or attract clients. Then one day, a friend handed her a copy of Florence's book. As Lydia read, she felt a spark of hope. All that I require comes to me in perfect ways. She began to speak these words daily with conviction. She imagined her shop filled with customers, her inventory replenished effortlessly, and her accounts balanced. She didn't know how it would happen, only that it could. Within weeks, a series of seemingly small events unfolded. A supplier offered her credit, a neighbor connected her with a client, and a local newspaper featured her story. It wasn't luck. It was the natural outcome of alignment with a principle she had only just learned to trust. When Thomas and Lydia speak, they are exercising more than hope. They are exercising faith, the active belief that their needs are already met. Florence emphasized that faith is not passive. It requires action in harmony with declaration. You can speak words of abundance, but you must also remain attentive to opportunities, take steps forward, and act in ways that demonstrate trust. Faith is like a river. The words are the source, but the current moves through your choices, creating a flow of life that cannot be contained. Imagine for a moment a farmer planting seeds in a field. He doesn't bury the seeds and then sit in despair, hoping they'll grow. He waters them, tends to them, and trusts that with sun, rain, and care, the harvest will come. The same principle applies to speaking truth into your life. God is supply is the seed. Your thoughts, actions, and expectations are the water and sunlight that allow the harvest to flourish. And the harvest may come in unexpected ways. Sometimes as a check in the mail, sometimes as a chance encounter, sometimes as an inner peace that changes the way you see every challenge. Back on that quiet morning street, Thomas reflects on how far he has come. The same bills that once caused him sleepless nights are now manageable. Opportunities he never imagined are unfolding. The unexpected check in the mailbox is just one example of a lifetime of provision that flows from faith. He begins to realize that abundance is not about chasing luck or scraping by. It is about aligning with a truth that is constant, unchanging, and ever-present. When you speak words of faith, when you act in trust, the world responds. Even in the face of uncertainty, the principle holds. There will always be moments when you don't see a clear path, when fear threatens to regain its hold. But in those moments the words, "God is supply," become a lifeline. They remind you that you are not at the mercy of chance or circumstance. Your provision is not dependent on luck, timing, or human effort alone. It flows from a source that never fails. Florence Scovel said, "Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly." That is the essence of this principle. It is not a prayer for what might come. It is a declaration of what already is. As Thomas walks the street, the sun climbing higher, the warmth touching his face, he feels a quiet joy, a certainty that whatever comes, he will be met with what he needs. The invisible forces of the universe are aligned, and he has learned to speak their language. Words are no longer idle. They are living, active instruments that shape his reality. God is supply is not simply something he says. It is who he has become, the lens through which he now sees every challenge, every opportunity, every interaction. The world around him begins to mirror this internal shift, as if reality itself bends toward the truth of his declaration, reminding him that faith, spoken and lived, is a power that cannot be denied. Picture a chilly autumn evening. The wind rustles fallen leaves across the sidewalks, and the sky is a deep, bruised purple, hinting at the coming night. On this street, a man named David walks home after a long, grueling day at work. His shoulders are heavy with worry, not just from the physical exhaustion but from the constant pressure of life's uncertainties. Bills stack up on the counter at home like miniature towers, deadlines loom like shadows, and he feels as if he's trapped in a cycle he can't escape. As he trudges along, he passes a small cafe, and through its glowing windows, he sees people laughing and talking, sharing warmth, food, and joy. A pang of longing strikes him. He wants that. He wants abundance, peace, freedom, but he feels distant from it, as if it's a world he can admire but never enter. Yet, in the midst of his heaviness, he remembers a phrase he had once read in Florence Scovel Shinn's work: "You cannot receive what you do not expect." He stops for a moment on the sidewalk, breathing in the crisp air, letting the words sink into his mind. The realization hits him like a soft knock on the door of his consciousness. Expectation is not wishful thinking. It is a readiness, a stance of the soul that opens the way for provision. David has spent so much of his life expecting the worst, expecting disappointment, failure, scarcity, and rejection. No wonder he has felt stuck. That night at home, David sits at his small kitchen table, the lamplight casting a golden halo over the worn wood. He closes his eyes and begins to reflect on what expecting good truly means. He recalls a time when he was a boy, saving up coins in a tin jar for a bicycle. He had believed in it with a childlike certainty, imagining the wind on his face, the freedom of the open street. He expected it, and when the day finally came, the bicycle appeared exactly as he had envisioned. That early experience had planted a seed of understanding, though he had forgotten it as adulthood layered itself over his life with worries and limitations. Florence's words remind him now that expectation is the soil in which miracles grow, and fear, doubt, and skepticism are the weeds that choke it. David begins a new practice. Each morning before the chaos of the day takes over, he declares aloud, "I expect my good. I expect abundance, joy, and opportunities to flow into my life." At first, the words feel strange, almost foreign on his tongue. But he repeats them, allowing their rhythm to seep into his consciousness, into his posture, into the very way he moves through the world. Slowly, subtle changes begin to unfold. He notices that he is more alert to possibilities. An unexpected phone call offering freelance work, a colleague mentioning an opening for a promotion he hadn't thought to pursue, even small acts of kindness from strangers that remind him the world is not solely a place of hardship. Consider the story of a woman named Clara, who had been struggling to find clients for her small graphic design business. She had sent out dozens of emails, made countless calls, but nothing seemed to stick. Frustration and doubt had started to cloud her thoughts. Then she encountered Florence's wisdom, which urged her to expect good. Clara began to visualize herself serving clients with ease, to see contracts arriving without struggle, and to speak affirmations of expectation daily. "I expect every good thing to come to me. I am ready to receive abundance." Within weeks, a former client referred a major project, one that transformed her business. A small local magazine offered her a feature that brought even more attention. Clara realized that her success did not arrive because she chased it harder. It arrived because she expected it to exist, and in doing so, she opened the doors for it to manifest. Expectation works in a similar way to a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. Without it, opportunities pass unnoticed, and you wander aimlessly through life, uncertain of direction. With it, even in the thickest fog of challenges and obstacles, the light guides you toward provision and abundance. David feels this firsthand. As he expects his good, he is no longer paralyzed by uncertainty. He begins to take inspired actions, not out of desperation, but out of confidence that his efforts will meet receptive circumstances. Doors that once seemed closed now appear slightly ajar. Situations that once seemed hopeless now reveal a hidden path forward. Florence Scovel Shinn emphasized that expectation is intimately tied to faith. "Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly," she wrote. To expect good is to act as if abundance is already present. It is to approach each situation not from a mindset of scarcity but from one of readiness and trust. David begins to notice how this subtle shift in expectation changes the way people respond to him. Conversations that might have been mundane become opportunities. Challenges that once provoked anxiety are now puzzles he approaches with curiosity and creativity. His own demeanor transforms. Shoulders lighter, steps more deliberate, smile more frequent, and the world mirrors this internal shift. The principle is not abstract. There is a tangible, almost magical effect when you truly expect good. Think of an artist preparing a canvas, envisioning the final masterpiece in every detail before the first brushstroke touches the surface. That expectation guides every movement, every choice of color, every layering of paint. In life, your expectation works the same way. guides your words, your actions, your decisions. It attracts circumstances that harmonize with what you already hold in your heart as true. David feels like an artist now, painting possibilities on the canvas of his life. He recalls Florence's words about abundance. All that I require comes to me in perfect ways. Each repetition of these words reinforces his expectation, embedding it deeply into his psyche. He realizes that expecting good is not about ignoring reality or denying challenges. It is about positioning himself to receive solutions that are already present but may be invisible until his mind is ready. This mindset opens doors to creativity, resilience, and intuition. Opportunities that he might have dismissed as improbable now appear within reach. David begins to notice a pattern. Each time he consciously expects his good, events unfold that confirm his declarations. A colleague introduces him to someone in his field, leading to a profitable partnership. A long-forgotten skill he possesses suddenly becomes the key to a lucrative project. Even small, seemingly trivial blessings, a free meal from a friend, a chance parking spot, a call from someone offering guidance, serve as reminders that expectation aligns you with the flow of life. When you anticipate good, you prepare yourself to recognize it, to act upon it, and to integrate it into your life. By embracing expectation, David feels a profound internal shift. Fear no longer dominates his mornings. Anxiety no longer dictates his choices. Each day becomes an opportunity to practice this principle, to speak affirmations, to visualize outcomes, and to act in alignment with the good he anticipates. The world begins to reflect this internal alignment back to him. It is not magic in the sense of instant gratification, but it is a tangible, experiential manifestation of a universal truth. What you expect, you create. Imagine walking through life as if you are already living the reality you desire, not out of arrogance, but out of trust. Imagine seeing challenges as temporary, solvable, and part of a larger plan that already contains your provision. That is the essence of expecting good. David has come to understand that each expectation, consciously nurtured, acts as a beacon, drawing resources, opportunities, and solutions toward him. It is a living, breathing force that begins within, but shapes everything outside. Imagine a quiet, rain-soaked street late at night. The droplets fall steadily, tapping against the sidewalk and rooftops like a soft drumbeat. A woman named Sophia hurries along, umbrella in hand, her coat pulled tightly around her to ward off the chill. She's exhausted, not just from the physical effort of the day but from the relentless pressure of life's demands. Rent overdue, bills piling up, and the constant worry about whether she'll ever be able to provide the kind of life she dreams of for her children. Her mind races with questions. How will I make it through? What if I fail? Will I ever catch a break? She reaches her apartment building, leans against the doorframe, and takes a moment to catch her breath. And in that stillness, a thought surfaces, one she had almost forgotten amidst the chaos. Provision is always available, but I must be open to receive it. Sophia had once read the words of Florence Scovel Shinn. You cannot receive what you do not expect, and your supply is limited only by the limits you set in your mind. Those words lingered in her consciousness like a quiet promise, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to truly believe them. She realized that all her worry, all her fear, had been closing the doors to the very blessings she desired. She had been treating life as a series of impossible hurdles, rather than a flow of opportunities waiting to meet her readiness. That night she made a choice. She whispered to herself, I am ready to receive all the good that is meant for me. I am open. I am aligned. I am trusting. The next morning, Sophia awoke with a subtle shift in her spirit. It wasn't dramatic, but it was unmistakable. A sense of anticipation replacing anxiety, a gentle lightness in her step, a quiet certainty that she was no longer struggling alone. As she went about her day, she noticed things differently. The bus arrived just as she reached the stop. A colleague shared a piece of information that unexpectedly solved a work problem she had been wrestling with for weeks. She received a phone call from a distant relative who sent a small gift, easing some financial pressure. None of these events were extravagant, but collectively, they formed a tapestry of provision, a pattern that became increasingly clear to her. When she opened her heart to receive, opportunities flowed. Think for a moment about a man named Peter, who had been struggling to keep his small business afloat. Each day, he worried about unpaid invoices, dwindling inventory, and competition that seemed relentless. He had begun to believe that success was a distant dream, reserved for others but not for him. One evening he stumbled upon Florence's writings where she stated, "There is a supply for every demand." Peter paused, staring at the words, and felt a spark of possibility. For the first time in months, he did not focus on what was missing. He focused on the idea that provision exists, waiting to be received. He began to visualize his needs being met, to speak affirmations aloud, and to act as though the supply was already present. Within weeks, unexpected clients came through. A long-lost vendor offered favorable terms, and an investor he had met years before finally responded with support. Peter realized that opening himself to receive was not a passive act. It was an active, conscious alignment with a law far greater than himself. Sophia and Peter's experiences reflect a universal principle. When we believe that we can receive, we create a state of readiness. The human mind is a remarkable instrument. It notices patterns, opportunities, and connections that are invisible to a mind clouded with doubt. When we remain closed, when we insist that scarcity is all there is, we walk past blessings without recognizing them. Florence understood this intimately. She wrote, "Your word is your wand. The words you speak create your destiny." By opening oneself to receive, by expecting good and aligning with the truth that supply is limitless, we activate forces that are always present but rarely acknowledged. Imagine a single mother named Lily, navigating the challenges of raising her children while working multiple jobs. Each month she worried about rent, groceries, and school supplies. Fear often dictated her choices. Anxiety clouded her vision. One evening, while tucking her children into bed, she whispered the phrase she had read in Florence's book, "I am ready to receive all that is meant for me." It became a ritual, her own private declaration of openness to divine supply. Weeks later, small miracles began to appear. A neighbor gifted a large box of food, an old friend sent an unexpected check, and she received a scholarship that helped cover educational expenses. Each event was a confirmation of a principle she had chosen to live by. The universe responds to those who are ready to receive. Provision, Florence taught, is not contingent on luck, effort, or human approval. It is a law of the universe, as consistent and unyielding as gravity. When Sophia and Peter learned to align themselves with this law, their lives began to shift. Their attention moved from scarcity to opportunity, from lack to abundance, from fear to faith. Each small miracle, each unexpected act of support, reinforced the principle. They came to understand that the universe is not indifferent. It is responsive. It offers blessings, but we must have the eyes to see them and the heart to receive them. Picture, if you will, a river flowing quietly through a valley. Its waters are abundant, life-giving, and constant. Along its banks, many stand with buckets, but only those who approach with openness, patience, and awareness manage to draw water. Those who hold fear in their hearts, who doubt the river's capacity, find their buckets empty. Provision works in much the same way. It is ever present, but it flows into lives that are ready to accept it, lives that are aligned with faith, gratitude, and expectation. Sophia, Peter, and Lily all discovered this truth in their own ways. Even when challenges arise, the law of provision remains unchanged. Sophia, for instance, faced a sudden medical emergency that could have overwhelmed her. Yet because she had cultivated a mindset of openness and trust, she did not panic. She acted with clarity, sought solutions, and discovered resources that had previously been invisible. Insurance covered unexpected costs, a friend offered temporary support, and she received guidance that helped her navigate the situation smoothly. Her readiness to receive allowed her to respond with confidence rather than fear. Florence's teachings emphasize that openness to receive is not passive. It is active, intentional, and intertwined with our thoughts, words, and actions. Speaking affirmations, visualizing positive outcomes, and expecting good are all ways to cultivate receptivity. By practicing these consistently, we create a state of alignment with the law of supply, a position from which miracles, both large and small, can manifest naturally. Each declaration, each act of trust, reinforces the invisible currents that bring blessings into the visible world. Consider a young entrepreneur named Marcus, who had been attempting to launch a startup. Despite countless efforts, progress seemed slow. Then he remembered Florence's wisdom. All that I require comes to me in perfect ways. He began each morning affirming this truth, visualizing opportunities, and taking inspired steps without attachment to the outcome. Soon he attracted investors, collaborators, and clients seemingly out of nowhere. It wasn't luck. It was alignment. By opening himself fully to receive, Marcus allowed the natural flow of provision to enter his life. Sophia, as she walks along the same rainy streets months later, no longer feels the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. She has learned that her life is not determined by chance or circumstance, but by her willingness to receive and recognize the abundance that surrounds her. Each rain-soaked pavement, each glowing window, each small act of kindness now feels like a reflection of the principle she has embraced. When you are open to receive, the universe responds. Provision is always available, but it requires readiness. It requires faith, expectation, and the courage to believe that good is not just possible, it is inevitable. Sophia, Peter, Lily, and Marcus are living examples of this truth. Their stories reveal that the flow of abundance is not a matter of luck, but of alignment, openness, and trust. When we declare, expect, and act as if our supply is already present, we position ourselves to receive the blessings that the universe has always been ready to give. The law is constant, unyielding, and faithful to those who open their hearts to its flow, allowing miracles to enter, transforming ordinary lives into extraordinary journeys. Now you know the power of speaking, expecting, and opening yourself to receive the abundance that's already waiting for you. Imagine living every day aligned with this truth, free from fear, full of faith, and ready for miracles. If you're ready to transform your life and step into a flow of unstoppable provision, hit that subscribe button. Not because I said so, but because knowledge unlocks power, and the prepared always thrive. Comment below. What 3 words will you start saying today to change your destiny? Let's ignite this transformation together.